If you want to understand the exact moment the global financial order began to fracture, you do not need to look at a stock chart, a central bank press release, or an inflation report. You need to look at a single television interview that just aired, which sent a shockwave through the commodity markets, the energy sector, and the trading floors of every major financial institution on Earth. Right now, the wealth in your retirement account, the cost of your groceries, the price you pay at the gas pump, and the underlying strength of the currency in your pocket are being directly manipulated by a geopolitical earthquake that the mainstream financial media is completely misinterpreting. We are witnessing the largest single-week surge in oil trading history going back to 1983. We are watching energy markets panic. We are seeing natural gas prices in Europe surge by more than 20% almost overnight. But to understand why your money is suddenly at risk, you have to understand the unprecedented military and geopolitical disaster that is driving these numbers. The global economy operates on a single, fundamental assumption. It assumes that the United States military can guarantee the free flow of energy out of the Middle East, and that any threat to that flow can be swiftly and decisively eliminated. That assumption is the bedrock of global trade. It is the invisible collateral backing the petrodollar. But over the last 10 days, that assumption has been shattered. The most powerful military on the planet, equipped with aircraft carriers, stealth bombers, billion-dollar defense systems, and 40,000 troops deployed across the Middle East, quietly sent a message to Iran asking for a ceasefire, and Iran said no, not maybe, not let us talk, not we need to establish conditions first. They said no. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, went on American national television, appearing on NBC's Meet the Press, a show watched by millions of Americans every Sunday. He looked directly into the camera and delivered a message that should have stopped every newsroom and trading floor on the planet. He stated clearly that things do not work like this anymore. He demanded a permanent end to the war, declaring that unless they get that permanent end, they will continue fighting. Think about the economic implications of what just happened. America asked the country it has been bombing for 10 straight days to please stop hitting back, and Iran refused. Not through a secret back channel, not through a diplomat whispering in a quiet room in Geneva, but live on American television, speaking directly to the American public and the global financial markets. That single moment tells you everything about where this war actually stands and where the global economy is heading. Because a country that is losing a war does not reject a ceasefire on national television. A country that is losing begs for one. And a superpower that is winning does not ask for a pause after just 10 days of combat. So what is really happening behind the curtain? Why did America ask for a ceasefire so quickly? And why did Iran, a country being bombed around the clock, absolutely refuse? The answers to these questions explain everything unfolding in the Middle East right now, and more importantly, they explain the massive transfer of wealth and the economic pain that is about to land on the average consumer. By the end of this script, you will understand the mechanics of this conflict, the hidden financial motivations, and the reality of the global energy market far more clearly than anyone simply watching the headlines scroll across their screens. Let us start with the financial and strategic reasons why America asked for a way out. 10 days ago, the United States launched Operation Epic Fury with a very specific, highly marketed promise. The operation was supposed to be fast, overwhelming, and decisive. The theory presented to the public and to the markets was clean and surgical. Massive, coordinated strikes would kill the Iranian leadership. The government would collapse from within. Regime change would happen in a matter of days. The Iranian nuclear program would be completely eliminated, and America would declare a historic victory before the rest of the world or the global commodity markets had time to fully react. On day one, the communications networks were severed. The mission appeared to be perfectly on track. The markets remained relatively calm, assuming the superpower would execute its swift victory. Then Iran responded, and the financial and military calculus of the entire region was turned upside down. Iran unleashed a coordinated wave of 500 ballistic missiles and 2,000 suicide drones. These were not random, unguided attacks. These were precise strikes across Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Israel. They hit simultaneously and relentlessly, without pause. The sophisticated American Patriot missile batteries, which cost millions of dollars per shot, began running critically low on interceptors while trying to shoot down drones that cost a fraction of the price. The math of this war immediately became unsustainable for the defending side. A highly advanced THAAD radar system was completely destroyed in Qatar. 7 American soldiers were killed, their coffins heading home in a somber reality check for a nation told this would be an easy win. But the military losses were only the beginning. The immediate financial retaliation was brutal. Oil crossed the $100 per barrel threshold for the first time since 2022, briefly touching $109 on Sunday. This triggered the largest single-week surge in oil trading history. The plan that was explicitly designed to last only 6 days has failed to produce a single one of its stated objectives after 10 days of intense warfare. There has been no regime collapse. There has been no internal revolt on the streets of Tehran. The nuclear program has not been eliminated, and regional stability, the very thing the global economy requires to function, has vanished. Instead of a collapse, a new supreme leader was selected. Mojtaba Khamenei, the dead man's son, immediately took power and pledged to continue everything his father stood for. The Iranian government emerged more unified than before the American bombs began to fall. But the most devastating blow to the American strategy came from within its own walls. The United States National Intelligence Council issued a formal, classified finding that later leaked to the public. The assessment bluntly stated that a large-scale assault on Iran was highly unlikely to topple the government. In short, America's own intelligence apparatus admitted that America's own war was unlikely to work. This catastrophic failure of strategy is exactly why the ceasefire message was sent. It was not sent from a position of overwhelming strength, magnanimity, or mercy. It was sent from a position of panic over a military plan that entirely failed to produce its promised results. And while the military reality was setting in, the economic pain at home was becoming a political nightmare. Gas prices in the United States shot up 43 cents in a single week, rapidly heading toward $4 a gallon. This sudden spike in the cost of living began landing directly on the shoulders of the 90% of American voters who vehemently opposed this war before it even started. Politicians understand that you can sell a fast, victorious war to the public, but you cannot sell a protracted, expensive quagmire that drains their bank accounts every time they fill up their cars. Now, we must deeply understand why Iran said no, because this is the exact point that almost all Western financial and political coverage is getting completely wrong. The natural instinct of Western analysts is to frame Iran's rejection of the ceasefire as mere stubbornness, religious ideology, or the radical Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps refusing to let rational politicians govern. But what Abbas Araghchi actually said on American television was something far more specific, deeply calculated, and strategically rational than a simple emotional refusal. He explained that Iran had negotiated with the United States in good faith twice recently, and every single time the United States attacked them right in the middle of those diplomatic negotiations. This was not a vague political complaint. This was a documented historical pattern with specific, undeniable dates attached to it. On February 25, 2026, Iran's own foreign minister publicly described a comprehensive nuclear agreement as being completely within reach. Active, serious diplomatic negotiations were underway in Geneva. The markets were pricing in a deal. Just 3 days later, on February 28th, American and Israeli bombs fell on Tehran. That was the second time they were betrayed during peace talks. The first time occurred in June 2025 during the 12-day war, where the exact same sequence of false diplomacy followed by sudden bombardment occurred. So when America sends a quiet message asking for a ceasefire today, the leadership in Iran is absolutely not reading it as a genuine, good faith offer of peace. They are reading it through the cold, hard lens of having been militarily attacked twice during previous periods of so-called genuine offers. From the perspective of Tehran, this new ceasefire message looks exactly like the last two ceasefire messages looked. It looks like a tactical pause request, a deceptive maneuver designed solely to give the attacking side time to reload their missile tubes, reposition their aircraft carriers, resupply their Patriot batteries, and come back for round 3. Araghchi stated it plainly to the world. He said, "And now you want to ask for a ceasefire again? This does not work like this." Therefore, Iran's fundamental condition for ending this war is not a temporary pause. It is not a brief halt to the violence. It is a permanent, structural, guaranteed, and irreversible end to the conflict. They are demanding the kind of comprehensive settlement that completely removes the underlying military conditions that allowed the United States to launch 2 previous surprise attacks during active negotiations. Short of that permanent guarantee, the Iranian leadership files every single ceasefire offer under the category of a military trap, and the ballistic missiles will keep flying. This dynamic creates a massive, seemingly unbridgeable gap between the two sides. This is not a minor negotiating gap over trade tariffs or border checkpoints. America's publicly stated position, the one they are selling to their citizens, is essentially the unconditional surrender of the Iranian regime. Iran's publicly stated position, backed by their continued military barrage, is a permanent end to all Western aggression and military presence. These are absolutely not two positions that a skilled mediator can somehow magically close over a weekend summit in Switzerland. Now, to truly grasp the complexity of this situation, we have to look at the internal dimensions within Iran, which makes the pricing of this geopolitical risk incredibly difficult for global markets. Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, stood up on a Saturday and did something highly unusual. He publicly apologized to the neighboring Gulf states for the Iranian strikes that had hit their sovereign territory. He offered a clear diplomatic gesture of de-escalation, stating that Iran would immediately stop attacking neighboring countries as long as those specific countries were not being used by the United States to launch strikes against Iran. It seemed like a breakthrough. But within mere hours of the president's speech, the Iranian military launched yet another massive wave of strikes directly onto those exact same Gulf countries. The president of the nation made a peace gesture, and his own military completely ignored it. To an outside observer, this looks like chaos. It looks like a broken government. But this is not a malfunction of the Iranian state. This is entirely by design. Iran's lower-level military command centers were intentionally given autonomous operational authority. This decentralized command structure was created specifically to prevent a scenario where a vague diplomatic signal from a politician gets mistakenly interpreted as a binding ceasefire commitment, thereby creating a vulnerable window for the United States or Israel to strike their missile silos. The regional commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps are not sitting around waiting for a phone call or official permission from the president or the foreign minister before they launch their weapons. They have standing, unbreakable orders to keep the military pressure sustained, completely regardless of what any civilian official says on television or at a diplomatic podium. This decentralized reality means something critically important for any global investor, energy trader, or citizen trying to understand how and when this war actually ends. Even if Iran's diplomatic wing genuinely wanted to accept an American ceasefire tomorrow morning, the vast entrenched military infrastructure that is actually executing the strikes would not automatically stop firing. The chain of command for peace and the chain of command for war within Iran are simply not connected at the bottom level. Furthermore, Iran's Revolutionary Guard has confirmed publicly, and Western intelligence agrees, that Iran is fully prepared to sustain this intense level of conflict for up to 6 months. They have already fired over 500 ballistic missiles and 2,000 drones in just 10 days. And military analysts have noted a very terrifying detail. The rate of Iranian fire has deliberately slowed down in recent days. This is not because their missile stockpiles are empty. It is because the Iranian military is carefully rationing its munitions for a long, grueling campaign, rather than exhausting its entire arsenal in a short, spectacular burst. They are preparing for a war of economic and military attrition. Meanwhile, the broader geopolitical chessboard is reacting to America's vulnerability. Russia has officially confirmed that it is providing Iran with real-time, highly advanced satellite intelligence regarding American military positions and troop movements. China's foreign minister has publicly warned that the flames of war risk spreading, but behind closed doors, Beijing is quietly and happily watching American military credibility and financial dominance erode in real time. The longer America is bogged down in the Middle East, the more freedom China has to operate in the Pacific. Over in Europe, the situation is rapidly deteriorating into an economic crisis. The continent is staring in horror at natural gas prices that have surged more than 20% in a matter of days. This is because Qatar's immense liquefied natural gas exports have been completely halted due to the fighting, instantly taking 20% of the entire global supply offline. European industries that rely on cheap energy are facing catastrophic production costs. Almost every single external party with significant geopolitical influence over this conflict has a calculated, strategic reason to let it continue just a little bit longer to bleed the United States. The only entities desperately begging for an end to the violence are the Gulf states, whose glittering infrastructure keeps getting struck, and the ordinary people on all sides who are ultimately paying the ultimate price in blood and economic ruin. So where does this narrative of a ceasefire actually end? To figure that out, we have to be brutally honest about what the word ceasefire actually means to each specific party involved in this conflict, because right now they are absolutely not using the same dictionary. To the political and military leadership in America, a ceasefire simply means a necessary pause in the fighting. It means a chance to stabilize skyrocketing global oil prices before those prices completely destroy their domestic political standing ahead of the elections. It means buying crucial time to reassess a failed military strategy that has not produced a single promised result. And it means hoping to eventually reach some kind of face-saving diplomatic agreement that can be falsely packaged and marketed to the American public as a strategic victory before the midterm voters go to the polls. To Iran, the word ceasefire means something entirely different. It means that the last 2 times they heard that specific word from the West, they let their guard down and they got bombed. So to Tehran, a ceasefire means absolutely nothing until it is permanently attached to a structural, binding settlement that physically makes a third American surprise attack impossible. To the wealthy Gulf states, a ceasefire means please stop this madness right now, before our multi-billion-dollar desalination plants, our massive oil refineries, our glittering international airports, and the entire 50-year economic miracle we have painstakingly built out of the desert get completely reduced to a smoldering crisis management situation that we cannot economically recover from in less than a decade. To the 7 grieving American families burying their dead soldiers this week, a ceasefire means stop sending our people into a manufactured war that America's own intelligence agencies explicitly stated was highly unlikely to succeed in the first place. And to the countless innocent families in Tehran who are currently breathing toxic air heavily contaminated by burning oil depots, watching black rain physically fall on their city streets on a Sunday morning, a ceasefire means we never chose to be a part of this geopolitical chess match, and we do not have the money or the means to leave our homes. The massive, unbridgeable gap between all these wildly different definitions is the exact reason why the quiet ceasefire message sent by America was rejected by Iran in the most humiliating public way possible. It was rejected on American television, to an American audience spoken in perfect English, with absolute terrifying clarity. Iran's foreign minister did not reject that ceasefire out of blind hatred or foolish stubbornness. He rejected it because accepting a temporary ceasefire based on Iran's own documented bloody experience is exactly how you get bombed for a third time while your military guard is down. From their perspective, the only acceptable deal is one that alters the balance of power in the Middle East forever, making that third attack structurally impossible. But here is the ultimate trap for the United States. America cannot realistically offer that kind of permanent deal without it constituting a formal, total withdrawal of its military presence from the Persian Gulf. They would have to abandon the massive military bases from which these attacks were originally launched. And the American political establishment cannot possibly offer that kind of concession publicly without it being immediately recognized as the largest, most humiliating strategic retreat in American military history since the fall of Saigon in Vietnam. It would signal the definitive end of American hegemony in the Middle East. So because neither side can back down without suffering catastrophic political or existential defeat, the war continues. Global oil markets are currently panicking, with crude sitting at $109 a barrel and aggressively heading toward $150 according to top energy analysts, especially if the vital Strait of Hormuz remains closed to commercial shipping through the month of March. The human cost continues to mount, with 7 American coffins returning home and 170 innocent children caught in the crossfire of a destroyed school in southern Iran. A tragedy that Human Rights Watch is already calling a formal war crime investigation. Black rain continues to fall over the citizens of Tehran. Qatar's massive liquefied natural gas facilities remain totally offline, starving Europe of energy. Saudi Arabia's largest, most vital oil refinery has been forced to close its doors. And all the while, America's own national intelligence